This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from Lillipub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelkastens. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelkastens have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Book.
Let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 27, Novel Research with our Zettelkastens. Welcome to episode 26 of the Zettelcast, where 5 friends from lillipub.org get together and discuss a lot of things that we have in common, especially around our Zettelkastens, and our Zettelkastens are our plus ones in this. And our Zettelkastens are definitely going to be our plus ones in today's episode. One of the things that I've been thinking about, so this is episode 26, and I'm just so happy we're doing this. One of the things that you will catch one of us saying to the other on this show and in other arenas is, I want to live in your head. And if you're not even into using a Zettelkasten yet, it's fun to listen to people who like the idea of being in each other's heads. It's, I think I would enjoy watching this show even if I weren't on it or interested in the topic. So I want to put out a little plea to those of you we have a few dozen regular listeners. I'm told that liking and commenting actually help to increase the visibility of YouTube videos. And if you think that it would be valuable for this kind of show to get on the radar of some other people, just do that. If you like it, click the thumb up. If you have something to say, a question, anything, we would love to hear from you. So there's the obligatory thing. But really, we do want to see that happen. I think that there is more appetite for this information than we're seeing in the viewership so far. All right, so today I'm the host, and we always try to have 2 activities planned. And the first one is about the Roanoke project, but specifically about what that we're working on in our parts of the Roanoke story has led us to want to do some research, and how we're doing that research with our Zettelkastens. So this is the kind of thing that our newsletter authors are very familiar with doing. They've got a lot of practice, so I think that we'll learn from them. But what I had asked everybody to say, if your experience using your Zettelkasten with this Roanoke research wasn't awesome, that's good to know about too. This isn't just about telling the happy stories. So, but maybe we have only happy stories. We'll see. So, Deb, you had started talking. Do you feel like talking some more?
Well, there is so much controversy about this whole idea of using writers using AI, and I think it's a tool. I think it's a tool that's useful, and it's not something that you throw it in and then whatever it spits out you publish and say it's yours. No. That is not the way to use it. It's a research tool. I mean, nobody gets upset if you say I Googled it, right? So what's the matter? Okay, and the idea is that AI gives you more robust kinds of responses. Okay, than Google Google as it stood before it went AI itself. But it gives much better much more robust responses. So in my case, this time, because my Zettelkasting is still kind of a mess, you know. But there are ideas that keep bugging me, you know. This whole idea of the matriarchy versus patriarchy and the way things go with that, and all that happens as a result of people with with that mindset. I'm a woman, so I can't do X. What? You know, you're a man, so you can't do X. What? Equal. These are problems. Or the idea of working every day, and working is fine, but trading dollars for time, I'm not so sure that's fine. You know, is there another way to get things done? Is there a way for us to communicate on an infallible basis? Because words at best are approximations, right? And the whole idea of, I mean, just think about it. We are the animals in us that we are, and we communicate by grunting, basically. You know, grunting in various accents, you know, and it's like, and it's a maybe, because when I say ball, you might see something with dots on it. Somebody else may see something with stars on it. Somebody else may see something square, you know, but it's, you know, I'm saying, wait a minute. But if we had a mind meld, if we could see it, just like you said, Julianne, we could see it in each other's minds simultaneously, and at the same time have it positioned in a way that still allows for individuality. You can still be self. You don't lose self. You can have private thoughts. You know, you choose when to do what. And so all of these things swimming around in my head, so I put together a super prompt, a super long prompt, and gave it to Perplexity, and I love what came back. It is definitely a basis for something that is story worthy, readership worthy, right? Interestingly enough, that same exact prompt choked GPT, choked it, killed it. I submitted it 3 times, and each time it came back, something went wrong. Please try again. So I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe, you know, Shelley would be the person to speak to about that, perhaps. I don't know. I'm just doing an experimentation, doing this in a way that's satisfactory to me and my purposes. You know, so that's the totality of what I have to say about that.
And the nature of the prompt and what came back is all full of spoilers.
It's also
right.
Is all full of spoilers.
It's all through. I'm sorry, I have a call. I gotta take it.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Sure. Well, thank you. We'll see you back.
Okay.
Who else would like to tell a research story?
Well, I'll go.
All right.
A Zoom
So,
came out of it because of you.
Let's see if we can.
can you mute that, Kathleen?
Yeah. Mute.
There you go.
So back in January, I took a trip to Pittsburgh, and on our way back from heading home from Pittsburgh, we decided to do a independent bookstore tour. There's lots of them in Pittsburgh, but I had a list of 6 that we were going to look at, but actually after 3 we were exhausted. So, but they were good. They were really good. But in the last one we went to, I found this book, good old Escher and Bach, which I tried to read probably 15 years ago or 20 years ago. I'm not sure. Couldn't make heads or tails of it back then, but I think it might actually work this time. But in addition to that, there was another book by the same author, which is a collection of articles that he wrote, and it's called Metamagical Themes. And articles that he wrote about math and science and computers and the nature of reality and linguistics, all sorts of different things for Scientific American in the early 80s. And so when I was flipping through this book, I was seeing all sorts of like different kinds of games and ways to play with numbers, ways to play with words. And I'm like, this, I think, could be an excellent resource for the Roanoke project. So with this prompt to do some research for Roanoke, I'm like, okay, it's time to dig into this book. And so on a superficial reading, like Adler teaches, I identified that there were 2 chapters that I particularly wanted to look at. Fortunately, this thing has a detailed breakdown to the chapters, so very nice, easy to see what's what. But the one that I focused on this time was called The Gnomic Game, which was a game created by a lawyer where in the process of the game, you can change the rules of the game. And in fact, that is part of the game, changing the rules. And however you want, however the players want to change the rules, if they can get the other people to agree to it and vote to it, then they can change the rules. And so I thought that seemed really, really useful for our game on this planet that the ancestors set up. And in fact, there was a particular quote where he said in this game that he's describing, players may be governed by the game when they think they are between games or when they think they have quit. And I'm like, you know what? That really applies to the people who came to the planet and thought that the game never started because the ancestors disappeared. And so they think they're not playing, but they are. and I also, well, I can't say the rest of what I thought because it's a spoiler, but we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it later privately. But yeah, there is also a chapter on mechanizing creativity, which may or may not be relevant. I didn't get a chance to look at that one.
Oh, yeah.
I will go next since mine kind of dovetails or is at least in the same lane, I guess. So when I initially ran across the information in the book This New Ocean, the story of the first space exploration, I found the thing about the Sibiu manuscript, which was written in the 1500s, and it's full of the first rockets. And that kind of sat in my little Roanoke section for a while because I just haven't gotten back to it. I have one brain cell on it. And that led me several weeks after finding that, and I got the book, This New Ocean, and I did, a quick reading through it just to kind of get my bearings. That led to the Shadow Library, and we've talked about this in a previous episode about the endeavor of cataloging all of the books that exist in such a way that they can never be erased because they're mirrored upon mirrored upon mirrored, thereby always making this library available digitally. So that's another thing that got filed and just kind of sat and percolated for a while. And the reason I chose this is because for me, this is very indicative of the process of writing with a Zettelkasten. It's like picking flowers. You pick this one and you put it in the vase. And then the next day you walk by and you pick that one and you put it in the vase. And pretty soon, over in the vase of your Zettelkasten, you have this bouquet of ideas, and they're all together because these are kind of in a holding area. I don't know what I'm going to do with them yet or what they're going to become in the writing, because of course I'm approaching this strictly as a fiction writer. And they're just sitting over there. So I thought over the weekend, I want to go back to that. I want to give that a little bit of time and brain space. So I grabbed that pile of cards and I started looking through them. And I really got involved in this idea of not just a shadow library, but what does our Roanoke, what's the reality and the function and the usefulness? I just started thinking all these questions about the library itself. And that led me to another card that I had just jotted down, and like a dummy, I didn't date it, so I can't say when, but way back in the beginning of talking about this project, which is the 9 countries that Reporters Without Borders included in the Uncensored Library. So the Uncensored Library is a digital library that exists on a Minecraft server. And in order to access any of the wings of those 9 countries, you have to go in through the Minecraft game, because Minecraft is a game that is widely available even in countries that heavily censor their press. So reporters or journalists who have no other way of sharing their work, they do it in this uncensored library through the Minecraft game, which I love because it marries up all of those ideas of information sharing and gathering and doing it in a game format. So now, as of 2020, there were over 200 books, and they're starting to get really good at back doors that allow, say, a country like North Korea, who's extremely locked down, to use a game into a game into a game that allows you to get into the library. And then there's a common room, which is basically an index, and you can take the book out of the wing, off of the shelf, and open it, and multiple gamers can look at it together. I mean, it's just this cool experience. So that was kind of how I connected all the dots together. And then that led me down the road of starting to think about what would our ancestors, what might they bury or put behind some barrier to access, and why? And then how would our people, because if they share this consciousness or this communication that doesn't require them to do the legwork of thinking through, what does that look like? And how do we communicate that so that it becomes part of a plot? Because of course I'm always thinking of how do we tie these elements down, how do we tether them tangibly to plot points so that we have an actual story progression. So I can't really say anything else because I'm going to wade into bad territory, but that's kind of where over the course of, I don't know, at least 7 months, these things have just collected in my note cards, which has kept them alive someplace in my mind. So when I sat down with all of the cards and started looking at the board, if you will, to start thinking through what that could look like for the story, because of our conversations, several things started falling into place in such a way that we could make that make sense in the story and make it fun, not only for the readers, but really fun for the characters. So that's mine.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. I want to go next because mine, I think, relates really very well to what you just said. So I thought it's time for me to know a little bit more about a henge.
Mm.
So I pulled out the memory code, which is Lynn Kelly's book, where she talks about her theory, which was not a widely accepted theory at all. It wasn't, nobody had ever said it. She couldn't believe it, that Stonehenge is a memory palace.
Oh.
And how she came to that is very fascinating in the book. So I looked through, I'd taken my amateur Mortimer Adler skills to say, okay, where is it that she talks about Stonehenge? It's very clear where it is that she talks about Stonehenge. So I just dove right into that and did a quick read through of everything. And even in the very beginning, I was getting the inkling. I need to do an analytical read of this entire book because this entire book is pertinent to Roanoke. Here's one way that I can say. So this is just a beautiful thing in human history, right? For whatever reason, serendipitously, she started researching these things called songlines,
Mm.
which are still active in Australian indigenous peoples. She can talk to somebody who remembers millions of things because they have walked the song line and they can walk the song line in their mind. And the song line is a gigantic memory palace spread out over, could be miles and miles. And it was used by hunter-gatherers to do lots of things. You're taking these big journeys to where it is that you're going to be able to get the whatever it is at this time of year. And the song line would tell you when it's time to go, medicines that you're going to be able to collect along the way for the sicknesses that some of your populace are likely to get, what to forage for, how to make it safe to eat, just incredible amounts of stuff. And so having living testimony to the ability to do that over song lines is what helped her connect the dots when her husband, who like her was interested in staying active after retirement, and he was going to get an archaeology degree. And she followed him along. And she's standing there.
Awesome.
And so she had started to put together this wacky theory that Stonehenge sounds to me like it's kind of a memory space. And nobody had thought of it. And so what she realized is that, well, in a pre-literate society, the memories are gone. And so the archaeologists are saying, oh, where there's this thing, it must be some sort of like fertility goddess. They have no clue. So she did it. She took that and said, not only is Stonehenge one of these, the British Isles are full of them. Full of them. And there's one in Brittany. And then she said, well, maybe there's some in the Americas. By golly, there are. And so in the chapter about Stonehenge, she walks you through what could have happened. It's a thought experiment. You're a hunter-gatherer community, and you are part of the transition into being an agricultural community. You're not traveling your songline path anymore, but you've got a lot of knowledge in there. Where are you going to put it? Well, you put it in this big thing that you can walk around. And she's talking about the fact that in those societies, these egalitarian societies, the one source of power was knowledge. That everybody, it wasn't about wealth. They weren't amassing wealth. They were all equally wealthy or poor. But knowledge was the power. But once people settled in agricultural civilizations, wealth became power and violence became power.
Mhm.
And the knowledge role became subservient to the warlord. Um, and then after a while, we start learning how to write things down, and then all of that use for a place like Stonehenge is not needed anymore. So my feeling, part of this, the song lines, I wasn't thinking about at all, but thinking about our ancestors in the Roanoke project, I credit them for knowing everything that I just said. And they would want to, knowing that what the link is going to do, they would want to find a way to experientially remember the wisdom of their ancestors as well as their own wisdom. And so I don't know how it comes about that they construct the game so that it is necessary to put things into the henge, or it's fun, so you do. But necessary to get things out of your head and into life. So yeah, so that was my experience of just stepping a toe in and then seeing, all right, this actually connects to the entire the entire book. So much like Mel's like, well, you've got a reference for the kinds of games that they would create, and taking Lynn Kelly's understanding of the need for these spaces gives us something to think about. Is like how would you use that tradition in a modern way? It's a big question, but I think we'll be able to do it.
Mhm. Well, well, my section is a little kind of a corner of the world, not the whole grand game by any means, but I think it's an important piece because what I'm trying to research is the birth of meaning. We infants are born into the world, and without regard to where they live, anywhere in the world, they, without any seeming effort, acquire the language of the community. So where does the meaning begin to take place? Is if you don't have a basis of meaning, you have to have a ground of meaning to attach meaning. And so I wanted to play, we have the link. And I think this is not a spoiler, but the link connects the people in the community with one another. They have instant access to knowledge. And on a choice level, we have access to each other's thoughts if the others have chosen to expose them in certain ways. There is a certain level of privacy possible. But what is happening in the knowledge of the moderns is the link is occurring in language without anybody's needing to be aware of the fact that it's happening in language because it's a shared language. And so the character that I'm exploring, Teresita, is somehow missing the language component. And yet it's going to turn out, I don't know, maybe this is a spoiler, but what I'm researching, then I won't go that direction because I don't want to really reveal anything. But what I'm going to the connection is the potential that the link is capable of communicating at a much deeper level than the level of language. And there are other communications possible, which we all communicate in without having to think about them or without having to assign words to them. Face to face, we just convey certain things. Well, everyone knows through a facial expression, or we convey things that have nothing to do with words. And but the link is capable of communicating on those other levels. And so that's what I want to explore, is on a deeper and deeper level. And over the weekend, I was exposed to some research that's being done in whale language. And researchers have now been able to break whale language down into individual words. And they have been able to map the occurrence of the words, the frequency of the words, and it matches the patterns that you see in natural languages. So it's becoming much, much more evident that they are actually communicating in a language.
Wow.
So now the question becomes, we don't have a link to the whale. What will be the mechanism by which we can come to understand the language? And that also relates to research, which now I have contact with a real human being who is actually doing this level of research. But the way the Mayan language was cracked, was cracked was phonetic. The researchers, and it was a very young fellow, the son of a researcher. I think he worked on this from age 17 to 24, worked out the phonetics of the Mayan alphabet. And once he had worked out the phonetics of the Mayan alphabet, he was able to pronounce the stories that were written on the cave walls, but he had no grounds whatsoever to understand the stories written on the cave walls. But when he read them to the modern Mayans, they understood the stories.
Wow.
And then they were it was just like nothing to crack the language. So we are very lucky over in Scott Shepard's group that we actually have a researcher who is a PhD linguist from Stanford University who has worked in the Mayan language. So why is her name escaping me? Can you help me out, Victoria? She's the poodle lady. We'll edit this out.
Sandra Pinkerton.
Sandra Pinkerton. So I really want to talk to her about, I know that she has worked in the Mayan language, but I haven't talked to her about her experiences in the Mayan language. She's in her 80s, and that means she was alive and probably working in the Mayan language at the same time that all of this was happening.
Wow.
And so that is a key research factor that I'm hoping to do with her, because I think that will inform a level of language that it may just be that the game is such that if you really want to communicate with the part that is a spoiler that I can't share with you, we may have to go through a different, deeper channel that is not language.
You have to play Minecraft. So cool. Well, so how was that for people? I mean, we had the the episode deadline to get this done. I think we've been thinking about these little things for a while, and this was a focusing. But how was it different from how you might have done it in the past before you had a Zettelkasten?
Oh, well, for me,
That's muted.
I would, oh,
Yeah, Deb, we muted you because we didn't want
But
to
I
hear your
muted myself
conversation.
before I got off the phone.
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. But before even my disorganized Zettelkasten, it was so much worse before because all I had was pieces of paper all over the place. Pieces of paper that didn't even have proper dates and labels on them. Just scribbles. And so when I ran across those scribbles a month later, or even sometimes only a day later, I was like, what's this? What's this? The idea you were talking about, Victoria, of logging your stuff every 15 minutes because you had so much stuff to do. And I was thinking about that the other day. What? How do you do that? In my mind, I would be so busy writing down what I was doing, I wouldn't get stuff done, you know? So
Well, I can actually answer that question.
oh, good. I'd love to hear the answer. Yes, thank you.
It it's a debate skill. As a debater in competition, in order to track the speeches as arguments develop, you take a long size legal pad and you turn it long ways and you divide it into 8 columns because there's 8 speeches in a debate. Column 1 is the first affirmative case column, and that's written, that you stand up and read that's your case, and that is the foundation upon which all the subsequent arguments should take place. So that's pre-listed down the left margin. So then when the next speaker stands up to speak, they're going down each point of that case and making their argument. And so as you're hearing their arguments, you're just flowing over. Okay, the response to A is this, the response to B is this. And so that's how you flow the speeches as they respond to one another. Well, while you're doing that, you are preparing your next speech. So while you're flowing what's happening in real time, you're pulling evidence from your files that you're going to need when you stand up to give your next speech. So it's 1000% a debate skill that allows you to record what you're hearing or make tag notes so that you know, while at the same time performing the action of building your next speech. So when I was at work, when I was in the trench in that way, I had a calendar, which this is something I use to write my fiction. It's a 4-person calendar. So every day is time stamped down the left margin from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then you've got 4 columns. Doctors use them, like to schedule 4 doctors. So the receptionist has one day, 4 columns, and she can schedule each doctor throughout the day. I transitioned my skill that I learned in flowing debate rounds to my job. So I would use 1 page a day, 4 columns. When my day started, it was everything that happens in sequence. And then the next thing that needs to happen goes into column 2. So if it's 7:15, I take a trouble ticket call because a carrier has a backbone down, then I'm already pulling the resources that I need in order to follow that ticket. And that's going into I have a set of files that's going in. And then as the next thing comes in, I'm recording it and I'm flowing what needs to happen next. And then usually about every hour or so, I would break and either delegate or work those items and then go again. I did that all day for 8 years.
Wow.
And it's funny, just as a little side note, because other people did all of their work digitally. They were always losing things. Their idea of a workflow was, if I need to work on this ticket, I'm just going to search my email and pull up all the email chains, which there might be 80. So now you're going to sit there and you're going to pick and piecemeal through an email chain to figure out what happened and what you did and what needs to happen next. For me, it's all right there. I just look across and go, okay, I'm in column 3. What's my next step here? I need to escalate that ticket and go again. And so then it was funny because we would have meetings, where you're accountable to the CEO or whatever. And often people would, well, how did you work that problem? Well, and they're searching emails and they're, all over the place. I just opened my book and I'm like, if you want to see what I did in 15-minute increments all day, here you go. And you could literally see how I did everything. So it became a training tool because then I could just hand my book to a newbie and say, this is how you work those issues and here's how you flow your progress and you always know where you are.
Okay, so are you thinking in terms of, please? doing a YouTube channel or something, or sub channel, or another book on this skill, because I know, I'm sorry, but if you got it and people need it, you know, because I know that I'm not the only one. You know, if you have a problem, know that because you're human, it is not yours alone. If you have it, guaranteed somebody else has got it too. So
That's true.
It is a very interesting analog observation.
I couldn't do it digitally. There's no way. There's no way to track that many moving parts in real time digitally. You can't do it. I saw people fail, people that were extremely proficient and efficient and all the things could not do it digitally because you can't move fast enough. But with your hand, you can move as fast as you can write. And once you dial in some abbreviations and some shortcuts or, you know, brackets, whatever, I mean, you can knock stuff out really quickly. And so I do talk about it in my YouTube videos on character building because that's one of the ways that I use for plot. I took the exact same system and I start on day one, and each column is a character. So if at 8 a.m. my protagonist is sitting in the dentist chair, then I know at 8 a.m. my villain needs to be in his office hacking her computer. And you literally can follow your characters through a day and you always know where they are in relation to each other, so you never lose them. And that's how you can pull those threads through. I do talk a lot about that in one of my videos, but I probably will revisit that after my book comes out. Because it's helpful. It's a helpful way to see your whole world. Because we all understand planning stuff on a calendar. Why not write your book that way?
Why not?
Which has been
your life that way.
This is the last thing I'll say. That's been one of my challenges with Roanoke. I can't put it on a calendar. I can't plot it in time. So I've had to figure out how to abstract the story out so that I can see it in a different way. And I still don't have my arms around it entirely because it's not tangible in the same way.
We'll get there.
I know.
We'll get there.
I'm working on the system.
So does anybody else have, before we move on to the second activity, does anybody else have, observations about how this might have gone without your +1?
Oh, I can tell you, I would have read a book and thought to myself, this is really interesting. I could use this here, and I wouldn't have written it down. And in a day or less, it'd probably be gone. Yeah. And then if I remembered that I even had the thought at all, would I remember the details? Would I remember where I got it? Probably not.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, same for me. The act of creating these different kinds of cards for the different level of reading that you're doing, I feel like it is creating a mindset that it's not hamstringing me at all. It's just it's more like yes and. Great thought. What are you going to do? Where are you going to write it? And so the ability to not only find the ideas, but also to have them, more often than previously, filled up with insights rather than dashed off and left for later to be. I mean, I still have lots of dashed off things like exhaust valve, but all right, why don't we go on to the next one? So then, yeah. Oh, sorry, Deb.
Yeah, I just because I was thinking about Kathleen's How to Read a Book thing, which is the basis for so much, so much. And I don't know if this is appropriate to bring up, but the idea of having one of those little mini rings,
Yep.
I think, yes, that guy.
Bip card on a ring.
Yep.
No, how to read a book on a ring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think that would be such a godsend to everybody who can get their hands on it.
Oh, okay.
You know, because you so many of us we read, but we don't know really. We were never actually instructed on how to read a book the way is in that book,
Yeah.
so that you really come away with something, and you recognize that every book is not the same, and you don't approach every subject the same way.
Yeah.
Right. And you find a foundational book and you go from there. The idea is all the things that we're talking about here make us such better thinkers,
Yeah.
you know, such better thinkers. And as better thinkers, we become better people,
Mhm.
you
And
know?
if we want to talk about becoming better thinkers, then we've got to talk about what Mel Jeffcoat is doing with his series. This is one he made for me, which is why I happen to have it out on my desktop, for how to make sure I cover all the bases when I'm thinking about a given character trait. And I just love this. This is already just making sure that my mind is staying active and considering how all of the possibilities relate to one another. So it just, that's another big avenue. And Mel's doing a whole series on opening your mind to different possibilities and logical ways of, of deliberately and systematically opening your thinking processes. So let's put a link to his channel.
Oh yeah, we link to his channel in every single episode. So this one will not be any different. Just go there and he's got a wonderful playlist. Very, very bite-sized consumable pieces that you're doing in that as well. Hats
It's
off.
not just logic.
Yeah, no.
It's not just logic. There's that recursive meditation that brings it all together. So you have a whole mind, your left and right side are together, munching on the same piece of fruit. You know, it's wonderful. You've done you're doing a good thing, Mel.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Well, we're nearly at the hour. I wonder if we should save for the next activity for the next time, or what? Or we could go a little longer. I don't know what you feel.
Right, you could be our moderator again in a part B.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's do that
Okay.
because this is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, where can people find us, Kathleen?
Be sure to come on over to lillypub.org. We have a whole special interest group on our Roanoke project. We have special interest groups on the Zettelkasten, on writing, fiction writing, and other forms of writing. Mel has a group over there on reading old books. It's just a wonderful place to come and join us, lillypub.org. And the monthly dues are priced about on the order of magnitude of a premium cup of coffee for an entire month of Lily Pub membership. So don't hesitate to join us.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.